Top 10 Shocking Man-Made Disasters. 1. The accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. This event has become synonymous with the concept of man-made disaster not only in the former Soviet Union, but all over the world. April 26, 1986, there was an explosion and fire at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which released a significant amount of radioactive substances, iodine and cesium, into the air. The winds carried them to both Western and Northern Europe, but most of them settled in Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. A total of about 600,000 people from among the liquidators of the accident's consequences were exposed to radiation. The World Health Organization estimates that over 11,000 cases of thyroid cancer were reported in Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus in the 30 years following the Chernobyl disaster. Some of these cases were probably due to radioactive iodine ingestion. The accident also contaminated land used for agriculture and forced thousands of people living near the plant to leave their homes. 2. The accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. It was confirmed 25 years later by another accident at the nuclear power plant. A magnitude 9.0 earthquake occurred off the coast of Japan on March 11, 2011, resulting in a tsunami. The natural disaster led to a man-made catastrophe. It caused the failure of cooling systems at the Fukushima 1 plant, which led to the melting of the reactor cores of 3 power units. Radioactive substances leaked into the environment. This accident, like the Chernobyl accident, was given the highest level 7 threat on the international scale of nuclear events. However, the consequences were less extensive. The amount of radioactive iodine released at Fukushima 1 was about 10% of that at Chernobyl, and cesium about 15%. To date, 1 death is directly attributed to the accident, and about 2,000 more are attributed to emergency evacuations, suspension of medical services, and suicides. In addition, tens of thousands of people left their homes, and the Japanese economy suffered a loss of about $200 billion. Some experts believe that if another accident like this happens in the coming years, the entire nuclear power industry could be buried. 3. The Bhopal disaster. As frightening as the tragedies of Chernobyl and Fukushima were, the largest man-made disaster in history, at least in terms of the number of victims, did not happen at a nuclear power plant, but at a pesticide plant. On the night of December 2 to 3, 1984, highly toxic methyl isocyanate vapors were released at the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India. Only on the day of the accident, the substance killed about 3,000 people, and the total number of victims in subsequent years reached 15,000. And that's just the fatalities. A total of about 600,000 people living in the vicinity of the plant were exposed to the poisonous cloud. The accident is believed to have contaminated the water in the area, due to which the locals even today give birth to physically handicapped children. 4. The Dust Bowl in the United States. You may remember that the characters in the movie Interstellar, before leaving Earth in search of a new planet, constantly encountered large-scale dust storms. This is by no means fiction. The inhabitants of the Great Plains, USA, had to live in such conditions in the 1930s. For many years, local farmers had been engaged in extensive farming, devastating the land, and when the 1930s brought a period of drought, dust storms came with them. At times they blocked the sky for days. In some places the dust on the ground was as thick as snow, and the plainsmen had to shovel it away. Storms even carried the dust to the east coast of the United States. The strongest of them all occurred on April 14, 1935. That day was dubbed Black Sunday, and the entire region was nicknamed the Dust Bowl. The dust storms caused about 500,000 of the region's residents to lose their homes, and a total of 2.5 million people left the region. In addition, dust pneumonia spread across the Great Plains, killing hundreds to thousands of people, according to various estimates. 5. Minamata Disease. As you can see, not all man-made disasters occur overnight. Moreover, sometimes they go unnoticed until it is too late. Such a case occurred in the city of Minamata in Japan. From 1932 to 1968, the Chiso chemical plant dumped methyl mercury into the water of the bay on whose shore the city stands. The substance entered the bodies of fish and other marine life, which then ended up on the tables of local residents. As methylmercury accumulated in the human body, it affected the central nervous system and caused weakness in the limbs, fatigue, tinnitus, hearing loss, and, in particularly severe cases, insanity and death. The syndrome, dubbed Minamata Disease, was discovered in 1956, but Chiso contaminated the waters of the bay for another 12 years. A total of 2,265 people were diagnosed with the ailment. More than half of the cases ended in death. However, this figure is not entirely accurate, as many victims of the disease may have died before it was discovered. Well, Chiso is still operating, with its headquarters in Tokyo and 3 factories, including one in Minamata. 6. The Great Smog in London. Every major city in the world has its calling card, and London has one of them, fog. Perhaps that's why the residents of the British capital saw nothing remarkable when they woke up on the morning of December 5, 1952. At least at first. Within hours, the fog mixed with the noxious emissions in the air, forming a smog of a yellowish hue. Moreover, it thickened so much that in some parts of London pedestrians could not distinguish their own feet as they walked. Over time, it paralyzed land and water transport, caused the cancellation of flights and sporting events, and led to an increase in theft. The Great Smog, under this name, this man-made disaster has gone down in history, lasted 5 days. The phenomenon was caused by a confluence of anthropogenic and natural factors. At that time, coal was actively used for heating and industrial needs in London, the products of the combustion of which triggered the appearance of smog, along with automobile emissions. And the windless weather prevented the yellow haze from dissipating. The smog not only blinded the city, but also left many victims in its wake. The number of deaths from bronchopneumonia and acute purulent bronchitis increased 7-fold. Older people, children and people with respiratory problems were the hardest hit. At last count, smog has caused a total of 8,000 to 12,000 deaths. 7. Accident on the Deepwater Horizon oil platform. The geography of man-made disasters and accidents is not limited to land. They also occur at sea. The Deepwater Horizon offshore platform in the Gulf of Mexico is considered one of the most notorious incidents on the water. On April 20, 2010, there was an explosion and fire which killed 11 people while the platform sank. But the tragedy did not end there. The well from which the oil was extracted remained open, and the black gold flowed into the waters of the Gulf. This flow could not be stopped for 87 days. During this time, about 3.19 million barrels of oil flowed out of the well. Thanks to the wind, waves and currents, the oil slick spread over 13,000 square kilometers. In addition to the loss of life, the Deepwater Horizon incident caused enormous damage to marine life. According to various estimates, the oil spill killed up to 800,000 birds, over 60,000 olive ridley sea turtles, and caused a 4-fold increase in dolphin mortality. In addition, the fishing and tourism industries of the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, which were closest to the dead platform, were severely damaged. 8. Oil fires in Kuwait. The oil industry has caused many man-made disasters, but not all of them can be called tragic accidents. For example, at the end of the Gulf War in 1991, when Iraqi troops were retreating from Kuwait, they set fire to over 650 oil wells and damaged about 75 more. The fires raged for 10 months. Huge columns of smoke rose into the sky, causing rains of soot and blocking the sun, causing the average temperature in the country to drop by 10 degrees Celsius at the time. In addition, some 300 oil lakes were formed on its territory. It is estimated that in 10 months 1.5 billion barrels of oil escaped from the ground. Most of it burned up, but 25 to 40 million eventually spread across the desert and 11 million ended up in the Persian Gulf. There were 133 million tons of CO2 released into the atmosphere, about 2% of the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by burning fossil fuels and biomass that year. The total environmental damage was estimated at $40 billion. 9. Disaster at the Wyont Dam. Water is the source of life on our planet, but it can also bring death and destruction. The man-made disaster at the Wyont Dam in Italy was proof of this. It was built in 1960 on the river of the same name near Mount Montitak in the northeast of the country to provide power to the surrounding areas. Almost immediately after the dam was launched, it turned out that Montitak is not as stable as expected. Cracks began to appear along its slopes, which consisted of landslide deposits. In the year of the launch, there was even a small landslide that raised the water level of the reservoir. However, the engineers who designed the dam were prepared for such events. What they were not prepared for was that the entire slope of Montitak would collapse into the water. But that's exactly what happened on October 9, 1963. More than 200 million cubic meters of rock collapsed into the reservoir, raising a huge wave that spilled over the crest of the dam and rushed into the nearby villages. In just 15 minutes, it destroyed 5 settlements and took the lives of about 2,000 people. The dam itself survived the onslaught of water and still exists, but has not been used since the tragedy. 10. Explosion of a weapons depot in Beijing. It is generally accepted that man-made disasters are a relatively modern phenomenon. However, lethal technology was available to humans long before the advent of nuclear power and pesticide plants. For example, humans had mastered gunpowder much earlier, and the inhabitants of Beijing experienced its destructive power as early as the 17th century. At that time, the armories, which among other things stored the explosive mixture, were located inside the city under guard of its walls. This reduced the chances of such an important facility falling into enemy hands, but it also served as a source of danger to the townspeople. On the morning of May 30, 1626, smoke was seen billowing over one of these warehouses, followed by a deafening explosion. It was heard even at a distance of 40 kilometers. Virtually everything within 2 square kilometers of the explosion site was destroyed. It is estimated that 20,000 people became victims of the tragedy. After so many years, the estimate may not be entirely correct. But if this is true, the Beijing explosion can be considered the largest man-made disaster in the world, against which even the mass poisoning in Bhopal pales into insignificance. Analysis of the incident much later showed that the force of the explosion was about the same as that of the nuclear bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. In the 1980s, scientists speculated that it was not just gunpowder stocks that caused such a powerful explosion. They believed there was an earthquake in the area of the depot which released natural gas. A combination of these factors led to the huge explosion.